I've also seen people who were solo and still do very well, right? Do you think having a co-founder is necessary?
It depends on your background and your preferences, I would say. But the general convention would be like,
how do you find a great co-founder? Which is, in my opinion, the most important step of a startup.
There are a few ways, right? Before you even use platforms like CoffeeSpace, the truth is,
if you have a friend that believes in the idea, right, then that's great. But most people don't have that. In those situations, you might have to do a trial. How do you set up the trial? What do you look for to lower the chances of a future breakup?
Okay. So this is how I define it.
What if the trial is not great? Should the person who will leave get compensated?
In my personal thought, my personal belief is that...
Hey, Hazim, thanks for coming.
Hi, man. Great to be here.
So you've built an app, a co-founder matching app that grew to about 10,000 users. Close in a span of 7-8 months.
Correct.
And the last 1,500 users happened in the last, few days?
6 days. Yeah.
Last 6 days. That's insane. Almost 10,000 users, 8 months. That's crazy growth. That's every founder's dream.
We could only hope, it is. We're very grateful that, things are definitely panning out, especially after the TechCrunch disrupt, whole experience over the past week.
What are you building? Can you tell the audience what is CoffeeSpace?
Yeah, of course. So CoffeeSpace is a Hinge-like platform for people to find co-founders and early hires.
So it's kind of like Hinge, where you can swipe, but instead of dates, it's co-founders.
Yeah, you can call it co-founder dates, but essentially you got to get to know the person before you become co-founders. It's an app like Hinge where you find profiles, but the filters are optimized to find a co-founder, right? The portfolios you're looking, their location, the industry, their timeline to joining a startup. Like, are they already on an idea? They want to join someone's idea. But it is where you look at recommendations and decide if you want to swipe right or left.
Cool. Very, very similar to Hinge, which I'm also a user as well.
Yes, it's a good app.
And I'm curious, what made you start this app, right? Why do you think this is an important problem to solve?
Yeah. So it's a personal problem. I was at the World Bank. So I was an angel investor before I became a founder. But after doing a few deals with my friends in the World Bank, did about 3 deals together as a syndicate, I started to fall in love with the concept of being a founder. Once you're on the other side of the table, you start interviewing them for your due diligence. Suddenly, there's a certain spark, right? There's a certain flair, hope in founders that you don't necessarily see in other, other sectors, other jobs per se. But I was solo. I couldn't build it myself. And I'm like, this is going to be too hard. So what I did was actually think about it. It was at the back of my mind for months, a couple of years before the point I actually decided, okay, I'm going to post about this on Facebook.
Okay.
Posted about it. My co-founder, Corinne, reached out. At that time, we didn't know each other. We were strangers. We met at an event. I judged this case study competition. She was a participant, she was one out of 100 participants, right? It was a time where Facebook was still a thing.
Okay.
Posted about the problem I was passionate about. She responded, and we started then having a call every Sunday for months. That was our equivalent of a trial period. But it was a Facebook post that found me and my co-founder.
Super interesting. And when you first started the company with her, it wasn't about finding co-founder, was it?
No. The first idea that you're going to be more passionate about usually is it's something emotional, right? Something sentimental. What we started first was a mentoring related. It was an auto intro platform for alumni for mentoring purposes. But we learned very quickly it's very hard to monetize goodwill. That is what mentoring is related. That's the core of mentoring, right? So we're like, okay, but you learn what the market wants, needs over time as you dig deeper and more and more. So it becomes less of an emotional thing, more of an objective thing. Is this something ultimately people want, need, would pay for?
Interesting. Is that when you realize that finding a co-founder is a huge problem? When did that switch
that
happen?
moment? Yeah. So we went through the Antler Accelerator in Austin last year with a different idea. It was the interim idea between mentoring and co-founder match. But during Antler, it is one of these accelerators where they say you can join solo, you'll find a co-founder here. But it's 50 people, right? It's 50 people. You put them in a Slack group, Zoom call. Some people found their co-founders, but the majority, you just need a much bigger pool of users and data points to match you up. And our friends, our cohort mates who became friends told us like, yeah, this is an existential level problem for us. Like, can you just solve this one problem instead of it being one of the 6 things you're solving? So that was when we decided, okay, this is a space worthy of exploring deeper.
Very interesting. So I think finding a co-founder is indeed an extremely hard challenge. And I have a fair share of story as well. I was able to actually very fortunately find my co-founder through a hackathon. And before we officially started a company together, we actually worked on a project, a nonprofit together during COVID. And that project, that nonprofit ended up scaling to 7 cities across the states.
I didn't know that.
Very helping 30 plus, restaurants, over 100 plus families, and during these very hard times. And it was over a span of a year. And because I enjoyed working with her so much, right? And, we decided to start a company together, right? And you found your co-founder also, because you post on Facebook, and then you had this, an experience kind of working on different projects before, right? Before starting CoffeeSpace.
And we just dug deeper, right? Corinne, my co-founder, was then working with Facebook. So it wasn't Meta yet. And she was a software engineer there. I mean, we enjoy our jobs. It's just every Sunday night, we're like, okay, let's just explore this and see what it might be, right? We read the mom test, how I built this lean startup, the startup book, the classics, right? Like we watch YC videos, just it's a process, right? You don't just decide overnight, boom, I'm just going to quit my job and do this. It is a process. It is a parallel runway that you go together with the co-founder or like whoever. Right? At that point, we weren't even co-founders. We were just explorers. So, But again, as you get deeper and deeper, you become more objective. You learn more about your customers, etc. You make a deck, you apply to IC, you raise a round. So that's basically the process we went through, and that's the case for most of our users on CoffeeSpace as well.
Would you say you could do what all these achievements you have with CoffeeSpace without a co-founder?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I know a lot of solo founders, and in general, they will tell me this is not by choice. This is just sort of what happened. Me personally, I am more of I'm the fundraiser, I'm the growth person, I'm the marketing person. I can handle accounting, finance, but when it comes to the coding aspect, I could learn if I wanted to. But wouldn't it just be much faster to have someone working with you? And it's not just from the skill set complementarity side, right? It's about encouraging one another. It is a very tough ride. The ups and downs. Going through it alone, it can drive you nuts. At least having another person there makes you believe, okay, I'm not the only crazy one here. Just convincing one other person, already shows that, this is not something totally crazy out of your mind that you are thinking alone.
I remember when I was running my last company, there's so much ups and downs, right? So much uncertainty, so much self-doubt. And every time I had that feeling, right, I would, talk to my co-founder about it, and she would just make me feel better. It's like, hey, look, this is the traction we have. This is the, the sort of the customer confidence that we have, right? And these investors believe in it. They gave us money, right? And all of that just, that's true, and all that self-doubt just kind of go away, right? And it's things that you can tell your employees about it, right? So I think beyond what you say, beyond the skills, beyond, for you is the technical ability, right, of your co-founder. I mean, actually for me, it's the same too. Beyond that, it's the emotional support, right? Because somebody being there for your business, right? Like a ride or die for the business.
It's an equal partner, right? When it comes to people, even your earliest hires, it's just you're not going to be at the same wavelength per se. Because in terms of just the equity you have in the company, you're going to give it your all. And when it comes to, the tough moments, that is what you need, right? You just need someone who understands and believes in the idea as much as you do. And that is what a co-founder provides.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a big fan of having co-founder. It really helps with so much of your startup journey. But in the meantime, I've also seen people who are solo.
The other side. Yes.
And still do very well, right? Do you think having a co-founder is necessary? Like, in what case do you think having a co-founder is great? In what case do you think somebody should go solo?
It depends on your background and your preferences, I would say. If your skill set covers all of the ranges necessary to build your startup, it is possible. And 8% of VC funding still goes to solo founder. So it is possible. And I don't know, right? Because if it's 8% funding going to solo founders and it's 8% of all companies being solo, then yeah, it's just the same odds of getting funded, whether you're solo or not. Right? But the general convention would be because there's so much risk involved in a startup, when at least there are two co-founders as an investor. So this is the other thing, right? Because I was an investor before becoming a founder, I've only invested in one solo founder. Of the 7 investments I've made, 6 were they had at least one other co-founder. Because if the one co-founder quits, that's it, the company dies. Or if something happens to the founder, right? It's unfortunate if that is the case. But the truth is, in terms of just the probability of longevity, of survival of the company, it is likelier when you actually have. And the probability of them quitting is also lower, generally, when you have a co-founder. So,
because they can help each other, they can support each other.
But yeah, if the relationship isn't great, then yeah, having a bad co-founder is worse than being solo. That is without
absolutely. Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about as well, right? Like, having co-founder on, a devil advocate, right? Having co-founder might actually increases the chances of company, not planning out, right? I've heard so many insane horror stories. I'm sure you do as well, which, know people who've raised millions of dollars with huge momentum, but the entire company has to shut down because of co-founder breakup, right? Like two co-founder sitting on the board, right? Having a deadlock situation, right? Not being able to accommodate each other, right? Not being able to come to an agreement.
Yeah.
And investors can't do much because a lot of times they're not on the board, right? The investments
the relative equity is just negligible at that point, right?
Exactly. And then they also invest through a safe agreement. So they're not even on the cap table, actually.
Not officially,
right? And then so investors can do anything, the employees can do anything, right? And the co-founders can agree on certain things, on certain directions, and then that maybe create a really bad relationship, and the entire company has to shut down because of that.
That is correct. Yes. Which is why, there's definitely a lot of these stories. Like, I know of a user who had a trial period, but without a contract, right? So then who owns the idea? Like, if there is no contract, what prevents the other person from just okay, this co-founder relationship isn't working, this co-founder trial, why can't I just build the same thing and become your competitor? So that is where the protections, you have to mitigate these risks early. And this is where a trial period with a signed agreement makes sense. So you need to know what are the data points you should learn about one another. And when things are all going well, rosy, is all good, you need to fight. How you handle the first big fight, a conflict within the trial period, will tell you a lot about each other. Okay, if you can fight, but the root cause is that you want the best for the company rather than it being a personal attack. Just because you're so passionate about the company, you are arguing your position because you believe it is a better direction for the company. It's nothing personal. Those are good fights. But when it starts being a personal attack, then that is a definite red flag, and you should get out of that relationship as quickly as possible.
I've heard people starting companies with a separation agreement in mind.
Prenup.
Yeah, like a prenup, right? And that's because a lot of times when they separate, there's a lot of debt weight, the co-founder debt weight shares, right? The co-founder has, and that debt weight shares will make the company harder to fundraise, right? Because you got
the equity should go to people actually working for the company, right?
Yeah. So that being said, right, in the best ideal situation, you don't have to deal with any of that, right? You don't have to deal with the breakout. You don't have to deal with the separation agreement. You don't have to deal with any of that. If you found a really, really good co-founder that you can go all the way with, right? We've seen examples like Airbnb, right? Three co-founders.
Yeah, DoorDash has 4 people in the company.
Yeah. Right. So there's many examples where co-founders start together and they're still together after even a decade.
And even of the FANG, right? The biggest companies out there, apart from Bezos at Amazon, every single other Facebook, Google, Netflix, I'm not sure about Netflix, but Microsoft, they all have co-founders. Apple, you hear about one founder, but most of them have co-founders.
And they all have stayed through the company at least for a while, right?
That's right.
Before they leave. So yeah. And which brings to the next question. How do you find a great co-founder, right? And which is, in my opinion, the most important step of a startup. You can screw up the idea, right? You can hire the wrong employees. You can maybe you
can raise cash, have to burn it as you iterate, but you can raise more. But when it comes to a co-founder,
right. Which is the most important step, right? Of a startup journey. And it's the one that people often overlook because they all, a lot of times they say, hey, let's just work together, try it out, right? But they didn't think, right, of the consequences that might happen if it's not a great co-founder.
So there are a few ways, right? Like before you even use platforms like CoffeeSpace, YC's co-founder matching platform, LinkedIn, you might just ask a friend first, right? From school, from work. But the question that I then ask, it's friends. You can use your immediate network, right? People you just know from prior interactions, whether it's work related or school related, that's it. Or you attend these networking events. And the tricky part of all of these is even with friends, you might know them well, but do they actually believe in the problem you're solving? Because the ideal scenario is someone you already know, trust, has the skill sets you want, and is passionate about the same problem in the location that you want, in the timeline that you want.
Yeah, right? So many things has to
But there's a lot of stars that needs to be aligned. Correct. Because I've heard cases where friends work together, but when a problem comes, and problems will come, the friend who joined because of friendship rather than a belief in the problem, it breaks up, right? You need to believe in what you're doing. Otherwise, how are you going to be motivated over 5-10 years to build something, right? Because Corinne and I were strangers, but we bonded with the passion of solving the same problem. So then is a philosophical question, right? What is stronger? If you had to choose between a friend who just because of the friendship has a strong bond, or two people who bond over passion for the same problem. Say they're not friends first, but they become friends later, like Corinne and I, but it's as a consequence of building the company together. So we bonded over passion for the same problem.
So you think it's more important to find somebody who cares about the problem than somebody who you have a deeper relationship with?
I think so.
Because why? Because the relationship can be built later?
Yeah. Because as you work together, you're going to become friends. You're spending whatever, right? 10, 15, 20 hours together per day. Because within the trial period, it doesn't even take 3 months, right? If you work together a week, a month, that long hours, you'll know whether you can work together or not. So
interesting. Let's dive deeper about the trial period. So let's just say you have an idea, you found somebody who cares about the idea, maybe not a friend. I think that's what most people's situation is, right? Because it's so hard to find everything aligned.
It's availability bias, right? Whoever who you know first, when you start thinking of an idea, you're going to think, okay, if I want to work with someone, who would that be? It's going to be people you know first. At least that's just how human minds will work, right? But ultimately, is that what is ideal for the company? That is up to debate. Because we have seen too many examples of people who found each other just through CoffeeSpace or YC co-founder matching platform or other channels where they didn't know each other, but they bonded because they started working on the idea together. They're doing very, very well. There's just more and more such stories already. It's the same as Tinder 10, 15 years ago, right? Online dating. People will say, no, you should always just find someone from your school, work, family, referrals. But no, now in America, 30, 40, if not 50% of all long-term relationships happen from online. And whether it's dating apps or Instagram, TikTok, whatever. But the shift has happened.
So you think the same shift from dating will.
That is our bets, exactly. That is why we're building what we're building, right? We are betting that as entrepreneurship becomes more and more likely because of the no-code AI tools, the side hustle, gig economy trend, And just the fact, like, yeah, AI will change the labor market. If they come after all jobs, what are humans going to do? But yeah, when you build something of your own, that's a lot harder for AI to take away from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So going back to the trial, right? Which is, if you have a friend that has that, that believes in the idea, right? That you have worked with, that you also have a deep friendship with, then that's great.
That's great.
That's maybe, the perfect situation.
You're lucky.
Yeah, then you're extremely lucky, right? But most people don't have that, right? Which is, right, like, it's extremely hard to have everything aligned. So then in those situations, you might have to do a trial, right? And how do you set up the trial? What do you look for to lower the chances of a future breakup?
Okay. So this is how I define it. The co-founder search process is like 80% LinkedIn and 20% Hinge.
Okay.
80%, it is what you initially get from the app, right? And you sort of know the kind of skill sets, background, like, the deal breakers, right? Location, timeline, idea, no idea, like, are you committed already? Can you join my idea? So this is the 80% part. You can filter people. But the other 20% is the vibe part. Can you actually work together? Can you trust each other? Like, can you just co-work even for a week together? So the trial period for us, we define it as like a short period. And it could be as short as a week, a month. Ideally, we believe it takes about 2-3 months, not just for you to know one another, but to have sufficient opportunity for there to be conflict, for you to see how you resolve conflict. Because it is not a real test until you fight and figure out how you can resolve a conflict together and come out stronger. Do you come out stronger, or like, does this just blow everything up? So it's a 2-3 month trial. It's a 2-3 month co-working period. It can be remote. Ideally, part of it is in person. Best ones, at least. They're just things you get faster, better when it's in.
I actually think it's necessary to be in person.
I think so. I think at least a week out of the 3 months, 2-3 months should be in person. It doesn't have to be the whole period, but there should be an element of in person within that.
Yeah, because only in person you can truly tell if you can vibe with that person.
Correct.
Right. The chemistry, I think, is also like extremely important.
Agreed. And you will also know their daily schedule, right? Like, like remote, you might, because it's a whatever, right? 1 hour call per day. Like, you don't know their full lives. But when it's a whole day, you will see what other commitments they might have, like, what is their habits, etc. So I agree. So it's a 2-3 month trial period with some elements of in-person, and where you're working on a project together. If one of the two has a project, you're probably just going to work on progressing that idea. If both of you are exploring, then it's whatever that you feel both of you connect deeper on in terms of a problem you might want to solve together. Because you're not just validating the co-founder relationship, then you're also validating the
ideas.
Yeah, the ideas.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what do you look for during the trial, right? Is it, maybe, the character of the co-founder, right? Like beyond the skills, right? Because skills is something that we all know, right? If that person can perform, right? That I mean, like that goes without saying, right? But beyond the skills, beyond the performance, right? Like, what are the things you look for? Is it the character, right? What do you think about? What do you think about that?
I can share my experience with Corinne, right? My co-founder. So one, I really wanted someone who complements me. If you are so close, you are so in sync with one another in the way you think, then you have groupthink, right? You want someone who challenges you, who pushes you, right? So Corinne and I couldn't be further apart in terms of like, the way I'm much more of a extrovert. Like, I try to be the diplomat. Because I was with the World Bank, right? I try to not avoid conflict, but handle conflict in a very less direct way. But Corinne is very direct. So, that tension is very good, because if both people are too diplomatic, then maybe you'll just never talk about the real problems that, you feel deep inside, right? But no, with Corinne, boom. She was just, Hazim, I don't think this is the way we should do it. And that is good. But if both people are like that, then you might fight too much as well. So the balance is good. But second is someone who pushes me. So you want to push each other. You don't want to be in a complacent state. It's we just feel like slow progress is fine. You want someone who keeps you on your toes. They're so good at what they do. You feel like, oh man, I need to keep up, right? Like, you push one another. Like, this is where you want the sum to be greater than the parts. So.
Yep, exactly. Dude, I resonate with this so much because my co-founder was like that too, right? Like I was the one, I'm actually more like Kareem, right? Which is like, I just like lay out, I just go very direct. If something is not good, I just say it without filter, right? Most people know me as the guy who is very direct. And my co-founder is she's great in a sense that she communicates in a way where, that makes other people feel better, right? Very complimentary.
I connect more with your co-founder. Correct. But you want both. In general, you want both of these personas, work styles within your company.
Yep. And besides that, what are the things that you think is important?
So you will see, do they truly have passion for the problem or not? Like, like it may be that they are excited in the beginning because, like the idea of, it's the illusion of grandeur, right? It's the illusion, like, the whole romantic part, the romanticized thought of building a company. But when you get into the grind, is the passion the same? Do they still have the same level of fire as the first few conversations? Or like, can you see that, do they want it
to happen as bad as you are?
Correct.
Right? Do they want the vision to happen? Do they want, the solution to be out in the world as bad as you are?
Exactly. And you can't really know that. I mean, you can sort of tell verbally in the beginning, but does the action, also portray that? And that is something you find through a trial period.
Another thing that I find pretty important is personality fit. So I don't know if you're a big fan of like the Myers-Briggs.
Yes.
So I am ENFP and my co-founder, she is ENTJ. So, and we were complementary personality wise without knowing our Myers-Briggs prior, right? And it was later on and we found out, oh wait, because of how, compatible it is, that contributes to the relationship. And the reason why I say that is that it's because as an ENFP, I'm more of a big idea, right? Like high level idea person, right? Very sort of visionary. ENFP also known as a campaigner, right? So rallying people, it's sort of my strength, right? So I was doing a lot of the hiring, I was doing a lot of the community building, and that is like very important for the startup that I was running. And she is ENTJ, which is very planning, right? Very detail oriented. So she actually helped make the culture of the company a lot more structured, the process, introduced a lot of processes during our meetings, right? We actually locked all of our decisions. And we would like often look back at our decision. Oh, why we made that decision? And given the information we knew at that time, was that the right decision or maybe we should change? So all the meetings were structured. And like essentially a lot of the internal stuff was very well documented, and we even had a guy, we actually hired a guy from Airbnb, and he was like, wow, this is the most structured early stage startup that I've seen.
That is not usually the case.
And it's not usually the case.
But it's very interesting though. Like it is true. Like I'm an ENFJ, right? So it's the protagonist. So like, but it's interesting in that way. You and I are closer from the big vision, trying to sell. Like personality. But Corinne, my co-founder, she is an INFJ. Okay. So she values a lot more about stability. Being more on the earth rather than being on the moon directly, right? So like, it's just complementary in that sense. And ENFJ and INFJ is like, is known to be one of the compatible working pairs as well.
Yeah. So I honestly, now knowing this, I would actually, like
we have implemented this on CoffeeSpace, but it is true. It is the third level of optimization of matching that we do want to do. We won't force everyone to fill in their Myers-Briggs, but it is. We believe that, if you can find out about the personality theoretical match earlier, then that is an additional data point even before the trial period, or because someone is of this personality, then you can handle it a lot earlier rather than learning it later through conflict during the trial period per se.
Yeah, I also think if you have somebody who is a TJ type, complements well with somebody who is more of an FP type, in the sense that, just drawing from my experience, is that I'm the one that usually connects well with everybody because of the F. The feelings are more emotional.
In my case, it's both FJs. So.
No, which is also fine. And And my co-founder, when it comes to the, the things that requires maybe like giving employees a performance improvement plan, right? Then my co-founder will be better at that and stepping in because he's a lot more like logical.
Yeah.
And I guess moving on to the next question, right? I think, let's say the trial is great, right? Then the next step will be pretty obvious, right? We talk about equity, maybe start vesting. And what if the trial is not great, right? Like, how would one handle that situation?
This is why, like, one of the expansion of our user journey, because right now people see profiles, they swipe. If it's a match, you chat, right? And like, yeah, then you go off app in terms of meeting in person, doing trial period and all. But this expansion of user journey to push people towards having a trial period, but it's not unstructured, right? Like there should be an auto-generated agreement. Like, and like it's as easy as clicking who owns the idea, what is the compensation for both parties during this period. The NDA is automatically signed so that you're protecting the idea, right? If it's already a company, and yeah. So having an initial agreement just to make it contractual is very important. Like, yeah, that protects the idea itself, because in most cases, it's one person having an idea with someone trying it out. So there are cases like me and Corinne where we both explore it, right? There was no clear owner of the idea per se. There was no company. But so an agreement matters. Second is like, the data points you learn about one another, auto-generating, the questions you should learn one another, given the context that the app already understands about you. But if things don't go well, so ideally, because if there's already a contract, you know what the next steps should be. You still want to have a good relationship as much as possible. Like, this is someone who gave time, energy, like, to you to try to further the company, right? Like coming from the point of like, okay, regardless of how the actual trial period turned out, understanding that, this is a person who gave you a shot. So matters. Like, it grounds the discussion for you to value this person, not just think about what went wrong. And not start the blaming game.
Should the person who will lift get compensated?
There should be some form of compensation, even if there was an agreement in the beginning that there is no compensation, depending on the contribution, of course. Like, there's no clear answer here. There should be an initial compensation agreement, but in my personal thought, my personal belief is that there should be at least some form of compensation, whether it's cash, whether it's some form of equity, during those 2-3 months, because it's still a long time.
Yeah, it is a long time, especially if they're doing full time, right? That's 3 months of salary they could have drawn.
So even if you don't want it to be debt equity on your cap table, it could just be an agreement you sign at the point where the company raises a certain X amount is paid to the person for their time. It just makes it clearer. Otherwise, 5-10 years down the line, they might sue you for a lot more.
Right.
So the core, the principle is being fair for what value the person provided, even if it's just a 2-3 month period. So our philosophy now is that, we will always try to pay, even if not in cash right now, it's cash that comes at the point you raise and you have sufficient liquidity to do so.
And do you think the vesting so let's say if it goes well, right? Do you think the vesting should start during the co-founder trial or after the co-founder trial?
I would say it's after.
After. Why?
Because equity rather than cash is most valuable when it's attributed to someone who will be in the company long term. At the point it will be a long-term arrangement. At the start of the trial period, you do not know that yet. So.
And also the expectation might be lower during the trial too.
Correct.
Right? Because maybe that person, still have a job.
Yes.
Right?
Because if you start vesting during the trial period itself and you need to go through whatever, right, 2, 3, 5 trial periods, you're going to have a lot of basically people on the cap table who are no longer directly contributing to the company. Like, equity should be over a longer term period because it is the best way to motivate long-term incentive. To incentivize people to contribute to the company long-term.
And why do you say trial it's in, 2 to 3 months, right? Why not longer? Why not shorter? What has to be?
This is just based on data points we've gathered from, our own experiences, stories from our users. It's long enough for you to learn deeply about one another, but not too long. Then, because if you ask someone to go 6 months without any equity, then they will start to wonder as well, right?
Why not 1 month?
It could be like there are cases. It just depends on the intensity of that 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Like the same as dating, right? Like whether you should date for 1 year, 3 months, whatever, before you actually know a person. It depends on the amount of experience. Yeah, I mean, what you experience within those 2, 3 months. So, but if it's just a month and there is no conflict that happened, you may not have gathered enough data points to really know of a fit. But within a 2, 3 month period of a startup, because a 2, 3 month period in a startup is like a year or 2 years in normal life, right? As you know. So within 2, 3 months, generally, there will be sufficient things happening with the company for you to learn enough about one another. Yeah. So it's not a hard rule. We will allow people within CoffeeSpace to choose how long a trial period they want to do. It is a choice, but we will recommend a certain guideline, and our recommendation will be 2 to 3 months based on what we've learned.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Do you think equity discussion should be done during the trial, before the trial, or after the trial?
There should be an initial discussion so that it's in the ballpark, right? Like, if it's a completely different expectation, someone wants 50-50, the other person wants 90-10, like, that's just not going to fly, right? If it's a matter of like, okay, between 50-50 or 60-40, 55-45, then that's a bit different. Like, because not all commitments are created equal, right? Like, maybe someone is full-time already, the other person is part-time. So they're moving variables. But there should be an initial chat on it. This shouldn't be the first conversation, but before you officially, as you start a trial period, there should be a conversation on it. So, and during the course of the trial period,
that's when you can see the value, right?
Correct. Yeah. You see value that each person brings. Ideally, it is you believe each other do provide 50-50 value to the company, but that is not always the case. So if someone is working part-time, has more, whatever, right? Family commitments, whatever, you have to respect that. But that also means it may not be truly a 50-50 split right from the get-go. But that can change. Like, we have seen cases where someone started with like a 60-40, but over time they realize we're really contributing at the same level. It becomes a 50-50. So like, it should not, because whether you own 60 or 50% in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Right? If the company works, you're going to have a lot. And it's also the signal that you show to the other person, because it's symbolic, right? It's not just about 60-40, 20%. It's about, if it's 50-50, you actually see the person as an equal.
Yep, exactly. Actually, why see any sort of equity split that is not close to 50-50 is as a red flag.
I agree.
And the reason for that is because then the founder is not bringing somebody who is equal as a co-founder, where it's better idea to find somebody else that you can see as equal.
Exactly.
Right.
And unless the company has progressed sufficiently, right? Like, if it's like the person has done solo and has actually raised a seed round before finding the co-founder, and then that's different. But given the fact, if the company is still so early, you haven't raised a round, you're still very much in the product market fit, like, validation phase, then no, it really should just be a 50-50. Do not fight to be 50 for that 5-10% extra. It's not worth it.
Because it's, there's this thing, it's more about what the person can contribute in the future than what has already been contributed. Because what has already been contributed is minuscule compared to the journey.
What you need to do to make the company work.
Exactly. The journey of the company.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
Now you're building, CoffeeSpace, right? It's growing. How would the world be different if CoffeeSpace is successful?
That is the bet I was talking about. I mean, I briefly alluded to just now, right? Like 10, 15 years ago, there was a real stigma against online dating. Like, they're like, you have no idea who these people are. It might be catfish. It could be like, just scammers on it. But see where the world is today, right? From Match.com when it began and where Hinge, Bumble, Tinder is now, it has changed, revolutionized the whole, relationship space, right? And it's the same thing here. We believe, CoffeeSpace is going to make the change that Hinge, Tinder did to the dating space. And we're going to do that for the entrepreneurship, co-founder matching space. Because the stats show, right? 60% of Americans have actually, in their lifetime, had a business idea before. 60%. But only about Yeah, but 91% of those don't do anything about it. So, ultimately of the 60%, only about 7, 8%, 9% actually do something about it. So, and that is much lower. The reason people don't bill is because they feel too overwhelmed. They didn't have all the skill sets, the time, the resources. If you look deeper into all these reasons, they are semi, if not fully solved by having a co-founder. It is at the core of it. We feel like when CoffeeSpace is successful, every person, the moment you think of an idea, it is a low barrier way to actually do something about it. Yep. Don't just leave it at the back of your mind. Like, just download an app and start talking about it. When you start talking about your idea, your vision, your dream, you are 10, 20 times more likely to do something about it. We want people to give themselves a shot.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Like for the first company I started, I cannot see myself going this far or being able to even start, right, without finding my co-founder. And it's the same way for her too. It's like, well, she can build, she has the technical chops, right? But it's still, there's so many other parts of the company, right, that needs to be done. And it's extremely hard to even, get started, especially as a first-time founder, right, without a co-founder. And it's not just about the skills, right? It's also about somebody, giving you the confidence to go do it, right?
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. If sometimes you have an idea, you are not sure about it, but if somebody was like, wow, that's a great idea. I want to work with you. Then all of a sudden, whoa, wait, this idea has legs. Yes. This idea can go somewhere. Sure. And somebody this competent, right, is willing to, work on this. And that absolutely motivated you to just go freaking execute.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It was two of us through the first 2 iterations of the idea. But as we got to this problem space, we actually added a third co-founder. And this is the unique case. In dating life, generally, it is 2 people. Very rarely would there be a third. But in a co-founder relationship, we ourselves didn't know that we would add another co-founder. But if the right person comes along and it adds to the dynamics, again, we did a trial period. Period went amazingly. So we are now a team of 3 co-founders. And that is even more so of a signal, right? If another person joins, after 2 iterations, 2 pivots, and clearly this one, is growing-ish. But that shows, right? At the point he joined us, we were still just 1-2 months into launching the app. We're still not clear we would be able to get to where we are now. And it's because of him, Fauzan, joining as well, that we were able to get here much faster. So
having a great co-founder is absolutely the greatest asset, I would say.
What if you have 2 other co-founders? Even better. Exactly.
Even better. Yeah. Right. Especially if you guys all work well together. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Before we end the podcast, where can people learn about you and CoffeeSpace?
CoffeeSpace.com.
CoffeeSpace.com. Yes. That's an absolutely great domain.
We're glad we were able to buy it. Yes. Nice. It's easy, right? It's an easy name domain because the domain was available. Or okay, this is going to be the name of the company, CoffeeSpace, and because it all starts with a coffee chat. So,
right, it all starts with a coffee chat.
That is why we chose the name CoffeeSpace.
Exactly how me and my co-founder, started as well. So, thanks for coming to the pod.
Thanks so much, man. Glad to have done this with you.